Hi, I'm Steve Neal, and this is Timbo. Thanks for joining us here on A Catastrophic Event for the first part of my interview with Spokane County Fire District 9 Assistant Chief Doug Bleeker. In today's episode, we talk about house fires, what causes them, how to protect your house from them, how to fight them, and when to get out. Considering house fires can go from a small flame to a roaring blaze in less than 30 seconds, it's no wonder they kill over 3,000 people and cost over $12 billion annually. Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Neal, and today this is a catastrophic event, and today we are covering house fires, how to prevent them, what causes them, and what to do during and after one. And my guest is Doug Bleeker. He is an assistant chief with Spokane County Fire District 9 and has worked in fire service for 38 years. He began working on an engine for the city of Cheney, Washington. He has a bachelor's degree in geology and physics and a master's degree in public administration. He teaches fire behavior to new recruits, incident command system to upcoming officers, and fire investigation to a number of fire agencies across northeastern Washington. His primary focus is fire prevention, and where he oversees the review of new construction, periodic inspection of existing buildings, public education, fire investigation, and we are very blessed to have him. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you a series of questions, and so we'll just get right on it. And the first thing I'd like to know is how common are house fires in the U.S.?
We're running around 353,000 here from the data I was able to get from U.S. Fire Administration for 2021. And our trend is going down. Internationally, the United States is not well known for being highly fire safe. In the industrialized world, used to be no one had more fires in the United States. We're down to about 7th place, I believe, right now. We're getting better, but we have a lot of fires. 79, we had 34.4 deaths per million of population. By 2007, that was down to 12.4, so we're getting better. But we're not the world leader in fire safety.
Why is that?
A lot of it has to do with some cultural and societal norms. In some of the Asian cultures, it would be horrible for me to have a fire at my house. That risk to my neighbors, my community, there'd be a huge amount of shame on me for that personally.
Okay.
And that's built into the fabric of that culture. In the United States, we're kind of lone wolf people. We do what we want. And we don't have that sense of responsibility as woven into our culture as it is some other places in the world.
Unfortunately, that makes sense. I mean, it's a good and a bad thing to be independent.
Yeah.
Because we don't care as much. I mean, it's kind of sad. So, how many people are affected annually by house fires?
So when you look at those numbers I was talking about, 353,000 in a year, that many families have been impacted, but we have about 83 million families, so it's less than 0.5% people who've had a structure fire in their home. So because we have that low incidence rate, not everybody's that familiar with the aftermath of what comes from a home structure fire. That's part of the issue, is raising that level of awareness for public fire educators.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's one thing about this show. That's what I want to do, is I want to raise awareness in that, because I know I'd be sick if I had a fire in my house. I mean, I wouldn't want to lose all my stuff, just like anybody else. It's precious to you. So, I want to get the word out. So how can a person speed up recovery from a house fire?
Okay. I meet a lot of people. We talk about issues that may lead to fires, and a certain cross-section of our public is like, hey, I got insurance for that. Yeah, you do. But there's a process there, and there's things insurance can't replace. How do you replace pictures of your grandparents? So if we're going to get in that recovery mode, one of the first things you got to do is have a plan for that. Get a hold of your insurance company as soon as you possibly can. Know who your agent is, know who your company is, who do you get a hold of to get that process going. Your speedy recovery is going to be helped exponentially by how quickly you get that process started. So that is the first thing. A lot of people have taken valuables, guns, jewelry, whatever, shot photos of them, keep a record of the serial numbers, all that, so you can cost out what those items were worth. Keep that on a DVD, either fire safe or somewhere off site. Now you can turn that information in, and that helps with getting things going that way.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Have you noticed, and this is just off question, but have you noticed any increase in problems with insurance companies, because it seems like the fires are getting worse and more expensive and things like that?
Yeah. They're taking a bath right now with the wildland fire incidents. Because we have the huge wildland fires, climate's getting warmer, seasons lasting longer. We're getting bugs that are attacking trees. We're getting 2 hatches a year rather than 1 that used to be normal. We're seeing pretty big catastrophic wildfires. There's a number of reasons for that. And it's hurting the insurance industry. It's becoming a problem for people to get insurance.
That makes sense, because ultimately they have to make a profit. And they'll do whatever it takes to make a profit because they don't want to go out of business.
Yeah.
So in a fire, what types of injuries are the most common? What do you see happening most?
In structure fires, somebody's inside this structure, and how are we getting people out? Where you're dealing with kitchen fires, typically you're seeing some type of a burn involved there. When we're talking about fatalities, 80% of fire fatalities never even see the flames, and what's taking those people is smoke inhalation. There are about 5 or 6 poisons in smoke from a structure fire that are more than enough concentration to kill you right then and there. There's 100 others that aren't going to kill you today, but they're cumulative. So guys like me that spend a lot of time around there, we got to be careful with that. But the big one we're very concerned about in structure fires with people inside is carbon monoxide. Your red blood cells transfer oxygen to critical tissues, and then from an emergency medical standpoint, we're looking at your brain and your heart. They use a lot of oxygen, and they're the tissues that die first, and they're central important tissues. So oxygen is moved to those tissues by red blood cells, and then carbon dioxide is taken off as a byproduct to get rid of it. As long as that process works, those critical tissues can function. Carbon monoxide has an affinity for red blood cells much higher than oxygen. So when you breathe carbon monoxide in, it will glue that red blood cell. It doesn't harm your body other than that red blood cell now is no longer carrying oxygen to your brain and heart. So in a short time, without the adequate oxygen supply, the brain and heart will die. Not because it's poisoning you, but because it's blocking up your ability to get oxygen to those tissues. And that's a problem for us when we're dealing with people inside structure fires.
There might be some people who don't really need oxygen to get but most normal people do.
Well, when you look at the populations that are most impacted, young kids, elderly people, anybody with any respiratory compromise, smokers have already got a certain percentage of carbon monoxide in their bloodstream already before we get to the structure fire. So
it carries over from the smoking.
Yes, yeah. Carbon monoxide is carbon monoxide. However you get it, it's going to be hard on your system.
I'll be darned. All right, you smokers out there, you just learned something. So what are the leading causes of fires?
Okay, when you look at leading causes, I can look at what I have in Fire District 9, and I'm looking at 20 to 30 structure fires in my jurisdiction over the course of a year. Okay. So do I have enough data to be statistically significant? So we tend to pool our data and look at those figures nationwide. It's easier to parse out trends there. So leading causes, according to the NFPA, most of our fires are occurring at night, 5 to 8 p.m. Washington State, roughly 60% of our fires are during dark. So as we look at them in Fire District 9, it tends to fall in 1 of 2 categories. People are doing things that they shouldn't, that are fire unsafe, and they're not engaging in fire safe practices that they should. National statistics, their leading cause is cooking. Up to 49% of all home fires are related to cooking. And when we look at injuries, the fires that start with injuries are kitchen fires. Heating equipment comes in second place, about 13%, according to national data. Electrical distribution comes in about 9% of the time. So what's going on with your wiring? Did you get a licensed electrician and a permit and all that? Lighters, candles, and matches coming next, about 7%. We see candle use starting around Halloween and running up until about Easter, that dark time of the year. And there's a corresponding increase in structure fires from candles and things like that. And then smoking materials is only about 5%. We're seeing that continue to decline. So those are the things that we typically see.
So with that in mind, what can a person what can a person do to kind of prevent, or well, for one thing, I just read an article, and if there's a outlet on fire, it lets out a certain smell. I think it was like pineapple or something. Did you hear anything about that?
I've never smelled pineapple in a structure fire. So
Okay.
Anytime you're burning plastics, and you see a lot of plastic components involved in electrical systems, you get a very acrid plastic smell that fire investigators pick up on pretty quickly. So some people are familiar with that smell. You can smell that, something is shorting out somewhere. We need to start examining what's going on. Maybe shut down some power to the circuit and make sure we don't get a fire.
Okay, yeah, I actually had a power surge strip thing, and I'd had it for a few years. It's no big deal, and all of a sudden it smoked out. I mean, it was black, and it was terrifying.
There's a couple of things with those. Number one, never plug a strip plug into a strip plug. There's an impedance calculation that goes on there. They have a safety switch in there for overcurrent protection. But when you start plugging them into each other, that calculation gets overridden and it doesn't work anymore. So don't daisy chain those together. Not a good move. Secondly, anytime you plug something in, make sure you've got it plugged in all the way. It's got good connection. Now, some of us who have, my house, I had the cheaper outlets, and after a while, the toaster plug wouldn't plug in tight, it would kind of sag. That's less connection for those electrons to go through. And the more electrons you push through a smaller area, the more heat that generates. We call it a glowing plug, and that leads to house fires occasionally. So when you're dealing with appliances that are plugged in, make sure they're plugged in all the way tight.
Okay, that makes sense. I used to work at Kaiser Mead. I worked there for 11 years, and so the electricity would go through the top bus.
Oh yeah,
through
there was
apartment.
a lot of power going through that.
Yeah.
I was your fire marshal up there for years.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, we had
quite
what,
the system.
60,000 or 80,000?
16,500 volts coming through one of those bus bars. Built in 1942 and was open.
I mean, I saw stuff blow up that was awesome, but it was scary.
Yeah.
Okay, so what items do you recommend a person have on hand to protect themselves from fires?
Piece of cake. You need a functional smoke detector. Absolutely need that. Like I talked about, in Washington State, 60% of our fires are occurring after dark. Normally after dark, you're at home in bed. You're in bed, you're not going to know there's a fire coming on. Some people are, I'll smell the smoke. No, you won't. You'll keep sleeping right through that, and as carbon monoxide builds up, you're going to sleep even deeper. So you need a smoke detector. Now, when we look at the number of homes that have smoke detectors, we're doing pretty well. However, of the smoke detectors we have, a high percentage don't have batteries in them, or the batteries are dead. Now, statistically nationwide, I'm still more likely to find a home only protected by battery-powered smoke detectors than 110 voltage household supplied power. So we're still big on making sure you got batteries in those working smoke detectors. Other people have smoke detectors wired into the household system. I got smoke detectors. Well, what happens when you lose power around here? Start lighting up candles so that you can see. You start bringing in alternate heating sources to stay warm, cooking sources. You're engaging in lots of behaviors that are risky from a fire standpoint, and your smoke detector needs to be working then. So the statistics are heartbreaking on what goes on with smoke detectors. When you look at the fires where fatalities occur, 63% of the time, there's no working smoke detector.
Oh my gosh.
So if you don't have a functional smoke detector, you're asking for trouble. You need that. That is your alarm, your warning to get you out. So that's the first one. A lot of people want to get fire extinguishers. That's great. Having a fire extinguisher is kind of like carrying a concealed weapon. You need some training on how you're going to use that.
Okay.
A few people have used a fire extinguisher on an actual fire. We do that training for a number of agencies in Fire District 9. Whitworth University has all of their residential personnel trained in that every year. And we have college kids coming in who've never used a fire extinguisher. You're going to get some hands-on. We're going to build a fire. We're going to show you how that works. So you want to know how to do that. The other thing with a fire extinguisher, everybody thinks it's going to be in the kitchen. I'm going to mount that right next to the stove. That's where the fire's going to be. You don't want to reach over the fire to get the fire extinguisher.
Okay, that makes
So if you go to
sense.
public buildings, fire extinguishers are in the exit corridors near the exit doors because we want you thinking about getting out. Should you fight this fire or not, we'd like you
Right.
thinking about getting out of the building. So if you get a fire extinguisher, don't mount it near the kitchen stove. Mount it somewhere near where that person's going to be getting out. It's the
Okay.
best place to put that.
So, on that, is a carbon monoxide detector the same thing as a fire detector?
It's not.
Or a smoke detector?
Smoke detectors look at smoke particles. Carbon monoxide detectors are looking at the amount of carbon monoxide in the air. And the smoke detector rings at one level. I see smoke, I'm going off, going to sound alarm. Carbon monoxide can go off if you have a very high level that spikes all of a sudden, or if you have a low level that lasts several hours. Either way, that's going to increase the carbon monoxide in your bloodstream. So they will go off at either one of those points. It's a different type of detector for a different purpose. Carbon monoxide is worked out to be the #1 accidental poisoning agent in the United States, and that's
Wow.
why we need them. Any fuel-burning appliance will produce carbon monoxide. So people have trouble with what is a fuel-burning appliance. Your car is a fuel-burning appliance, and it
Okay.
will create carbon monoxide. Your gas stovetop flame produces carbon monoxide. If you have a gas water heater or a gas clothes dryer, they're burning that gas and creating carbon monoxide. They have to be ventilated, and they can cause problems. If that ventilation gets blocked out by a squirrel or a bird building a nest, you don't know what's going on there until
Oh.
you're suffering the effects. And the side effects of carbon monoxide poisoning feel just like the flu. So it's difficult to tell. So if you've got any fuel burning appliance, you're going to need a carbon monoxide detector. And just about every home has got something that burns and will create carbon monoxide. Wood stove, fireplace, all of those things.
There was, this is a side note, but I read an article several years ago about, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was the first forensic pathologist of New York City. And he had one case where they came in and they found 2 dead people in a house, and they had no idea what happened. They thought it was a murder, suicide or something. Well, there was actually a 3rd person in the house, and he was barely alive, but he was alive enough to tell them what happened. And what happened is the couple were they're having an argument, and the lady started a pot of tea on the stove, and it was gas back then, so it boiled, and they were arguing. It boiled over, it put out the flame.
Oh no. Now you're filling the house with gas displacing oxygen.
Right. And so, I mean, it didn't take that long until...
No. And a little bit of carbon monoxide starts messing with your cognitive function. And so you'll see a lot of people that get out of the fire, I'm going to go back in and rescue somebody. Well, fire conditions now, 2 minutes later, are much worse than they were when you were inside 2 minutes ago. So you probably shouldn't do that. And your decision making is probably being impacted by carbon monoxide. What you think you could do, you wouldn't think that if you didn't have carbon monoxide reducing oxygen flow to your brain.
Okay.
So we are always advertising. Once you get out, stay out. You get a one-time chance to get out of a fire. Don't be going back in.
So let me ask you a quick question. Is it possible for a civilian to get training on how to use a fire extinguisher?
Yes, it is. Contact your local fire department. If they haven't got training classes for the public, do some more work, see what you can find out. There's some safety agencies that will do that. There is an expense. Fire extinguishers are not cheap or free. And when we go teach for agencies, we'll often tell them, you provide the fire extinguishers, we'll provide you with the training, so.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I mean,
Yep.
hands-on.
Yep.
So the one question I really have is, how fast can a fire spread?
There's an old NFPA video, National Fire Protection Association, called Countdown to Disaster, where they do a live fire test in a lab, and they have a big clock, and from the time of ignition until it's flashed over, everything in the room is burning, is about 5-6 minutes. And that's not a bad scenario. Fire District 9 does a demonstration day. It's going to be June 1st this year up at Station 92, Corner Market, Farwell. And
Okay.
we do some drills up there. We're going to have a couple of burn cells. We take and sheetrock out 2 8x8 cells, put furniture in them and fill them up with stuff. And we light those on fire and have the public start timing how long before the smoke detector goes off and how long before this thing goes to complete involvement. And it's usually 3 to 5 minutes that you've got complete involvement. Smoke detector is going off like in the first 15 to 20 seconds. So it really opens some people's eyes up and what you've got for time frames there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So I bought it's called a JJ Care fire blanket, and I'm just kind of curious, what do you think
Yeah.
of something like that?
Yeah, you emailed that to me. I did some research on that. Fire blankets kind of come from the industrial fabrication and laboratory environment. And in those environments, you usually have some type of fire suppression system, sprinkler system, alarm system. And in a laboratory, you've usually got a fume hood system. It's keeping gases and heat and that kind of stuff away. So in a laboratory environment, you may get burned, but the building isn't now burning. And a blanket's a very good tool in that situation. You're
Okay.
able to realize a lot of safety for the individual who's burned because you don't have to worry about the building burning down. Now in a home, probably don't have a sprinkler system. You
Right.
got a smoke detector, but you don't have a centrally monitored fire alarm system. You have fume hoods. Are you going to realize the same benefit? Probably not as often. Does that mean it's a bad idea? No, that could be something that you could use, but I don't think you'll see as much benefit as we historically see in a laboratory environment or a fabrication facility environment. They're slightly different.
So a fire extinguisher would be the way to go.
Fire extinguisher is a great way to go. A blanket, if you're gonna use a blanket for smothering a fire, you can do that. Blankets are also used for wrapping people up in who caught their clothing on fire. Now, in the laboratory, the building's probably not burning. We can take time to deal with that person right now. In the home, the building probably is burning. We need to deal with your clothes on fire and we need to get you out of the burning building. So you get slightly different emphasis there.
Okay.
In
Okay.
most of the cases, we're dealing with cooking fires. What I teach people is the same thing my dad used to tell my brothers and I when our music's too loud. Put a lid on it, turn that crud down. Okay? Put a lid over that burning pot. That's going to start for oxygen. I mean, you're dealing usually with some type of flammable liquid, and that's firefighting 101. Start it for oxygen. Then turn the heat down. It'll take time, but it'll cool it down below that ignition temperature. Get out of the house, call 911 from outside. We'll come deal with it. If a lid doesn't work, take a cookie sheet, seal that right over top of the pot. That will start it for oxygen. Don't pour water on it. Absolutely wrong thing. We'll make it worse. We will have that demo June 1st at Fire District
Awesome.
9, Corner Market, Farwell. And we'll show you why you don't want to do that. I can make flames go about 10 feet in the air by pouring the water on a burning pot of oil. So don't do that. You can
Okay.
use it fire extinguisher if you want, but the quickest, best way, put the lid on it, turn the heat down. Do not ever pick up a burning pot and try to move it. I've never seen somebody do that without spilling contents on themselves, and now we're flying them to Harbor View for burns, usually catastrophic burns. Don't try to move a burning pot of anything. Leave it where it's at, put a lid on it, turn the heat down, get everybody out. It's still burning when we get there, we'll deal with it. You know, you can lose your house and that is a very bad day, but you don't want to lose any people. Don't be trying to move that stuff that's on fire.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break for a second, and we'll be right back.
All right?
Thank you for joining us on our first interview with Fire Marshal Bleeker. We take our pledge to help save lives through education seriously, and we will put several great links on the do's and don'ts of house fires below the video on our YouTube channel and on the resource tab of acatastrophicevent.com. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment on this video. And thanks for watching.